Welcome to Mornings with Patricia. Happy Wednesday. Today I want to talk about how we see the world. Not just our perceptions, but how we travel in the world. And I read this book probably a couple of years ago. It's a biography. It's called A Sense of the World, How a Blind Man Became History's Greatest Traveler by Jason Roberts. A Sense of the World by Jason Roberts. And this guy was known simply as the blind traveler, and it was in the 1800s. And he traveled all over the world. Can you imagine in the 1800s, where there was no one to help you if you had a disability, to travel all over the world? And accommodations weren't what they are now, right? And the travel itself, sometimes taking a boat, but often he took other forms of travel, and whether it was horses or whatever. I just can't even imagine. I can't even imagine that. 1800s, being a blind person traveling all over the world, and into some very remote areas as well. So why am I bringing this up, and how does it relate to us? Well, I think a lot of times we're blind to things around us. We walk around blindly, and maybe because a lot of our perception, our spiritual perception is what do I want to say, closed down, because we don't have the eyes developed in our heart to see. Because we think we're limited by the five senses, we're actually going around quite blindly, not seeing probably 90% of what's really around us. Because, and I've talked about this before at Sacred Space, because the five senses are wonderful to help us to experience our world. But they also keep us from seeing a lot of other things. They limit us. So it's just amazing. But think about this blind man. Think about the blind traveler. Okay, so if you were thinking about going through your day, pretty much knowing that you are not seeing most of the things around you, but you would like to, how about becoming the blind traveler, right? So, and I can tell you this because I was blind for 3 months, you start to develop a different sense of the world. You start to develop your hearing. Clicks and I don't know, I can't really explain it, but you start to develop sound as a sense of depth. So if you start to hear something a little far off, you start to know how far away that is. Your sense of smell, your sense of presence. Right? So you can feel a person. A blind person can sense a person before they even make themselves known often. So if you were to consider those sorts of things throughout your day and say, okay, for all intents and purposes, I've been going around blindly, but now I'm going to be the blind traveler and develop all my other senses to open up my possibilities for the day. So what would that look like? What would you do? Can you think about that? What would you do if you were to, let's say, start walking down the street, and you say, oh, this is a street I've walked down before. Oh, I see the people. Oh, yeah, there's that post, there's the light, there's this, there's that. Now, take a deep breath. Start to consider what you don't see. What, the air around the people, the street, how is it connected to everything else? Right? This is kind of an interesting thing. We tend to look at things singularly, and I think this is why we have this feeling of being so separated from each other. So we say a street is a street, but a street is never just a street. A street probably has sidewalks, it has grass, or it has buildings, and you start to think about where the buildings and the sidewalks are connected, and the trees, right? And then you can see that it takes you from one end of the earth to the other, that it's all connected. Isn't that interesting if you think about that? How it's all connected. So that's a way to become a blind traveler, is to see. And you can probably, and I'm not suggesting that you consider yourself blind when this is an exercise, but it starts to open up your vision. It starts to, you're like, wow, I never thought about that. It's just like events, the whole butterfly effect. Yeah, if you're having an emotion or something happens, it can affect people all around you. And those people are in contact with other people, and pretty soon, yeah, that your effect goes all around the world. So you see how connected we are. So if you start to think about it in those sorts of terms, some very interesting possibilities arise. Uh, the sidewalk no longer becomes just a sidewalk. You start to feel the labor that was produced to, or that came about to produce that sidewalk. And then you start to think of the men and women who made that sidewalk, that made it possible for you to utilize that sidewalk. And then you think about the funds that had to come through and how that happened. Maybe it's tax monies and people's lives. And you see, there is this in English, in college, they used to call it intertextuality. Right? So everything is intertwined with everything else. When you start to really understand that, you just don't feel alone anymore. In fact, space and time start to become irrelevant because you can feel the people who made that sidewalk. You can also start to feel all the people who walked on the sidewalk. That's a sort of psychometry. Some people might say it's a sort of psychometry. So for those of you who don't know what psychometry is, it's when you put your hand against something, or you hold an object and you start to feel the history of the object, where you start to feel who's been in that room. So you're doing some psychometry with your feet. The same thing happens when I get an old book. I have some first editions. I have some books from the 1800s. I can feel the people who read that book. It's amazing. I get impressions of them. And you start to think about their lives and who were they? Who were the men and women who built the sidewalk? What were their lives like? This is not just conjecture. This is not just an interesting exercise. It's an exercise that really helps you to develop outside of your five senses. So you start to get this bigger impression, this bigger understanding of the world. It's an amazing thing to do. It's like when I go out in the garden. When I go out in the garden, I see the other day when I was weeding, I saw a bunch of ladybugs, and I was holding them in my hands, and I thought about all of the plants they had touched out there and their presence, and I was just really so grateful for that. When I look at my honeysuckles, I think about all the little birds that have been in there. How does the birds feel? What is that like? What is that like to be a bird in the honeysuckle? I think that's what the blind traveler experienced. He got to see the world without limitation. It's funny, isn't it? Because you think about it being limiting, but he got to see it without limitation. He got to see it with all of his other senses developed. And then this excitement, this joy, this wonder of experiencing the world. If you are getting up in the morning going, another day, or you're getting up and you're like, oh, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. Wow. The no judgment, but you are limiting yourself. How do you know what sort of excitement awaits you in that big old vast world out there? Even in your own house, there's so much that can speak to you. There's so much that can be so vital for you if you just allow yourself to be open, if you can start to arrange your whole energy, your whole being to await, or to envelop. What do I want to say? Oh, I want, to hug the day. To hug the day. Oh, I like that. I like that because that's something the blind traveler could understand. It's really interesting when people say things to me. They say, "Oh, I miss your hugs." Well, I'm a hugger, but I'm really a hugger. When I hug, I don't just hug. I hug, and my whole love and feeling go into that hug. And I'm so grateful for the person I'm holding. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity that another human being wants to make that connection with me. And it's a gift. A hug is this most incredible gift. To allow another person to be that close to you and to express your emotions and feelings, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So how to meet your world? When I was going through my sight issue and I was in the hospital for spinal taps, Bruce brought me in what became my favorite flower was the tiger lily. And I loved it because, as you know, tiger lilies are this crisp, waxy, wonderful flower that has so much solidity. So I could take my fingers and I could feel the pistil and the stamen, and I could, oh my goodness, and then the smell, right? It is a flower for blind people, really. It's amazing. And then Bruce would laugh because I couldn't see it, but I had stuck my nose in and I'd get all the pollen all over my nose. Talk about total immersion, right? Talk about total immersion. And I think that's what I'm trying to express to you today is explore your world, immerse yourself in your world. Wow, I get one chance here as Patricia, only one. And that's a gift. I'm not going to bemoan the fact that, oh, I've got another day. Oh, I have down days just like everybody. I have times just like everybody else. But more often, I am excited about whether it's going outside and feeling the wind on my face, hearing the voice of my family in the morning. Sometimes I just stand here and look at the books. I'm like, wow, all these people with all that knowledge, and here they are on my shelf. Wow, I could just reach out and get that, and wow, how amazing is that? Or this, goodness gracious, I mean, seriously, this book, what a wonderful read. I get to read about somebody who had an experience, in the 1800s. What an amazing world this is. With the internet now and social media, letters used to take forever to get to a place. When I was in Arcata, when Bruce and I were living in Arcata, Humboldt County, California, I met a gal in Trinidad who, I think she was the first woman to be part of the Pony Express, and her name was Jessie. And the local paper, which in Arcata, which is gone now, called the Union newspaper at that time, did an article on her. I met the woman who did the Pony Express. That, you've met people, you've had experiences. It's time to immerse yourself in that and just wonder. Go out there today with all of your senses, and you'll start to feel yourself. All of your energy comes up, and it's just amazing. So, thank you so much for watching today. Just a reminder, it'd be so great if you would share this. I'd love to see people who want to have the experience of Mornings with Patricia all over the world. So thank you so much. And 1, 2, 3. Oh my God, I love myself. I love you. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful, wonderful Wednesday. See you tomorrow.